I was listening to a talk show the other day, and some smarmy liberal called up the host and said, well, if you guys are for such small government, how are you going to fix that oil spill with small government? Now let me have a conversation about small governments. The tiny Continental Congress defeated the British Empire. Jefferson's tiny little government that didn't even have a White House sent Lewis and Clark across the continent, bought the Louisiana Purchase, and defeated the Barbary Pirates. Lincoln's tiny government cut in half, put the Union back together again. The presidents of the 1870s to 90s conquered the West. Little governments, when they do things that they are supposed to be doing, do things well. This giant monolithic government that we have right now has a bang-up oil prevention plan. It's this big. You could probably use the plan itself to sop up the oil, but they did not have a single boom ready to go for the oil. They had a plan, but no resources, because they're too busy talking about how much salt is in their food. They're too busy talking about the health care. They're too busy talking about cap and trade. They're too busy bankrupting your Social Security. So you've got these large governments out there, and they love to say that it must be a large government, it must have a lot of regulations, otherwise how are things going to get done? Well, it gets done because small governments specialize in what they're supposed to be doing, and we have a constitution that outlines that very clearly. Now, I'm running for a very specific reason. I am running because I believe in the 10th Amendment. The 10th Amendment is oftentimes confused for just state rights. It's much more than that. I am running for the single most unsexy, boring reason. I would like to disentangle the state of Florida from the federal government. And then as a three-term mayor of a small town, Micanopy, that's the next one up from McIntosh, I would like to disentangle the small towns and the municipalities from the state of Florida. The 10th Amendment is it's very vague in the sense of what it really means. When you go to your civics class and they say, well, there's a separation of power. You've got your legislative, you've got your executive, and you've got your judicial. Well, the 10th Amendment is a separation of governments. The 10th Amendment separates the federal government from the state government and the state governments from the local governments. And that is where we're looking at right now. This is the problem. There are actually 9 levels buried in this 10th Amendment. It's the state level judiciary, the federal level judiciary, and the local, and on and on. There's 9 levels. And when you have a candidate, such as myself, walks up and says, I'm a Republican candidate. I'm for lower taxes and fewer regulations. Well, if you're not, you need to not be a Republican candidate, get on out of the room, because stipulated. We're all for lower taxes, we're all for fewer regulations. But where do these regulations, where do these higher taxes come from? Well, they come from a misinterpretation of the 10th Amendment. It's because of the commingling of the various budgets, the 9 various budgets, it's because of the commingling of the various governments that you get this duplication. You get a confusion of authority and power. You lose your transparency and you lose your accountability. To go to Tallahassee and say, I'm for lower taxes and fewer regulations, you also need to know that that candidate understands where the higher taxes came from and where the regulations come from. And they come from a complete and utter misunderstanding of the state's rights, of the federal responsibilities, and the local obligations. That is where they come from. And you need to get inside these budgets. It's a Gordian knot. I don't know if we need to swing an axe or we need to just pick it apart. But the answer to the problem for lower taxes and fewer regulations is going back to the 10th Amendment, understanding that it's a separation of government in addition to the separations of power. And you start saying, that piece of budget doesn't belong in a state budget. Not only that, it funds something the state does not do. Maybe it's art in public places. Who knows? But the fact of the matter is that there is a lot in the budget that is duplicated at all three levels. The EPA, DEP, and the local environmental crowd. There are numerous examples of duplication, and everybody talks about duplication in the sense of state only. It is because of the commingling of governments and the commingling of the separations of power that we have all this duplication. And you've got to understand that before you can go onto the House floor and you can take your seat in the State House and you can say, I understand what's going on and this is how we're going to undo it. And we undo it by starting to untangle the budgets. There's these three pots of money out there and they've been commingled, and the transparency, the accountability for the whole system is gone. Who do you go talk to about your taxes? Who do you go talk to about that road out there? Who do you go talk to about the schools? Well, that's a federally funded program. Well, that's a grant we got from the state, but the state got the money from the federal government who took it from you and your income taxes. What? Who do we go see? Again? And then you end up talking to a bureaucrat.